Yeah.
So, sounds good. Great.
This picture that we took is from our backyard in Minnesota.
Oh, that's really nice.
Very, very pretty, lots of trees.
It's nice in the summer. It's not nice now. But Tokyo's nice. It's about 15 degrees today, so it's relatively warm, especially for February. How's the weather in Izmir?
It's getting warmer, I hope.
Spring is coming. Okay, good.
Sometimes it gets stormy here, you know, all the rain and storms.
Okay.
It looks like chaos, but it will be warmer.
Okay,
yeah,
it's part of spring.
That happens, right?
Yeah, spring is coming, yes.
And you're so close to the water. It's so beautiful there. So yeah, that's great. Good. Is who else was part of this? Nick? No, not Nick. Who's the gentleman?
David was the person who's going to be just watching with us, right?
I see. Okay.
Nick has his own presentation right now.
Oh, okay, good. Okay. Sounds great. Great. Okay. We have all of our notes ready, so.
Yeah.
I think you have slide 2, I have slide 3, you have slide 4 and 5. But I think we can.
Yeah.
I don't think it's too difficult. And if we have any questions, just one of us fill in. Do you think we need to have that shut off, or is that going to get too cold?
Can you hear the heater? Can you hear the heater in our room? Okay, then we'll leave it on.
It's fine.
It's a little bit cold.
Yeah, we'll get chilly, but sometimes in some sessions it gets annoying. So okay.
Last year I did a workshop with Screencastify, and they said the heater was so loud, so I was just freezing.
Wrapped up in blankets.
I had my coat on. I had blankets on. Oh my gosh, it was so cold.
Okay, so, I guess we have 31 participants right now, so
good.
You start, right? Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to the concurrent session of today. Supporting Learner Agency in the 2021 classroom by Kathleen, Kampa, Vilina, and Charles Vilina. Kathleen and Charles will discuss ways in which we can give our students choice, voice, and ownership in our English classrooms. Also, they will look at the ways in which we can assess our students' ongoing development. Kathleen Kampa and Charles Vilina are global teacher trainers and co-authors of Magic Time, Everybody Up, and the ELT18 award-winning Oxford Discover. Before welcoming our presenters, I would like to mention that if you have any questions, please write them in the chat box. They will be asked at the end of the session if time allows. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kathleen Kampa Vilina and Charles Vilina, courtesy of Oxford University Press. Mr. and Mrs. Vilina?
Thank you so much, Aisha.
That was beautiful.
Wow, it's so nice for us to be here. I really enjoyed my time in Turkey last year, being in Izmir at the conference, and so it's so delightful to be back again this year.
And I was in Izmir in 2014. I had a chance to, I think, visit your school, so it's been a long time, but great memories. So wonderful. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. And one thing, we don't know if you know that we are married. So we think that's maybe important for you to know why we're sitting so close together.
Yeah, we have 2 sons. They both live in Los Angeles, and John is 32, Christian's 28. Our youngest son is an actor. Our oldest son is in business. And so, yeah, it's very interesting. So, but we've been working with Oxford University Press for over 25 years. Our first title was Magic Time, and followed by Everybody Up, and of course now Oxford Discover. So welcome everybody. Do we want to minimize this? Okay.
Yeah, and okay. I just wanted to say I'm teaching, like many of you, in a classroom with children day to day. I work with children from the age of 2 in a PYP Montessori inquiry-based kindergarten, as well as up through elementary. So we bring that experience to our work today. Anyway, let's get started.
All right, great. So supporting learner agency. Let's look first at the definition of that. Kathy, I'll let you take. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh,
oops. There we go. So what is learner agency? Learner agency refers to the feeling of ownership and sense of control that learners have over their learning.
wonder if we want our picture up. So with learner agency, learners should have a growth mindset. They should be aware of their journey, their learning journey, where they are and where they want to go. That's very important. We want them to have the ability to learn and improve constantly on this journey. The willingness to take risks, to be resilient and confident. Those are all qualities that we want to build in our students and our young learners. Okay.
And it's also important that they can learn from their mistakes.
We're having a hard time shifting. Where are you? How do you do it? Okay.
There we go. So why do we think learner agency is important? There's a wonderful paper out on Oxford University Press. It's one of the position papers on learner agency. And it says, in short, learners who develop their agency are not only prepared for success as language learners, but also for the challenges and the opportunities that life affords beyond the classroom. We're teaching learners who can succeed for the 21st century.
Exactly.
So you might be familiar with things like this. This is a project that our kindergarten children did. They were given squares, circles, and squares and circles, and they cut them into triangles and created their own ideas. So you can see how they had their own choice and their own voice, and they created these ideas. The teacher scribed what they were making.
So when we look at learner agency, there's really 3 areas that we want to focus on. Student choice, giving students choices in their learning experience. Student voice, making sure that they can contribute to how and what they learn. And finally, student ownership, ownership being students personalizing their learning to take it home with them, to know that they really own what they learn. And what we find in many activities is that choice, voice, and ownership often work well together. And we'll show you examples of that today. We are going to be looking at Oxford Discover. That's where we're going to be taking most of our examples from. Perhaps some of you are familiar with this course. There are 6 levels as well as a preschool level. However, we're going to be focusing on the first 4 levels using examples from that. And Kathy and I are the authors of levels 3 and 4. So we're drawing a lot from that. As some of you may know about Oxford Discover, it's an inquiry-based approach to learning. And that means we invite students to ask lots of questions and seek answers to those questions. We use what is called a KWL chart in this process. And we're going to look at this a little more carefully, but most importantly, this supports student choice, voice, and ownership in very important ways. Here's a little close-up of it. On the far left, you can see that the first part of the KWL process is what students already know. So we invite students to tell us from their prior experience what they know about a topic. This is very important for student voice, for giving them an opportunity to contribute to the lesson.
We also find out what they know, so what they may not know. So we're pre-assessing the knowledge that they have. Maybe there are some misconceptions, and so we need to fix those and teach them.
So as a teacher, of course, you're constantly assessing this as the students are contributing. Next, we invite students to let us know what they want to know about the topic. And this is where student choice comes in. What are they curious about? What would they like to explore? What do they want to know more about? What are they wondering about? So this is, again, a very important part of the process. And then finally, as we move through the lessons, as we move through the unit, students are invited to talk about what they have learned. So we're constantly going back to assessing what we know, what we've learned on this journey. So as you can see, choice, voice, and ownership play a very important role in inquiry-based learning. I'm not sure. Okay, so we look at big questions in Oxford Discover. We introduce big questions for every 2 units. And this gives our students a chance, again, to contribute to the lesson. Who are your family and friends is one example. Why should we take care of the earth?
Let me just minimize you for right now so we can see that.
Yeah. Why do people write poems? So we move through a lot of academic subjects here. And how do we know what happened long ago? History is also part of it. So these big questions are a very important part of getting students to speak out and contribute. Okay. So let's look at student choice first. We're going to focus on student choice. Now, giving students choices means we want to give them choices about the content they are learning. So every opportunity you have to invite students to choose among different sources of content, that's very important. The tools and resources that they use to learn, and the environment in which they learn. Perhaps it's in small groups. Perhaps you have special areas in your classroom where they can work together.
Some children like to be in the center of activity, and some kids like to have a quiet space.
Exactly.
So let's look at this unit from Oxford Discover 1. Where can we see colors? So when we first look at this unit, we'll watch a video with all kinds of exciting things showing the colors. And then we can look at this picture. Look at all the fabulous colors that you see here. We see red tomatoes. We see purple or blue blueberries. So there are a lot of things that our students can talk about in these pictures and from the video. Now let's do something together. So I don't know if we can see you or hear you in our chat box, but we want to do an activity where we can talk about color. So where can you see color? So if I'm doing this with my really young learners, I would do one color at a time. So I might ask them, can you find something red? And the students would run. Do you have anything red nearby you? Can you show us? I can see some of your pictures.
Looking around, no.
So, yay, go good. Wonderful, good. I have a miniature solo cup that's red.
Great.
So we can do an online scavenger hunt. Students can find things that are yellow. I have things that are green. I have a blue scarf. I even have a blue frog. It's very, very cute. So it's a great chance for students to do that. If we're doing this at school, we could do a show and tell at school. Our kids love to bring things to school to share with their friends. In this unit, one of the big goals is to talk about mixing colors. And so we're looking at using the 3 primary colors and mixing them. So our 3 primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. And when we mix them together, we get orange, green, and purple. So one way we can do that, it's fun to do it in the book, but it's really fun to do it with hands-on. And I know a lot of you are young learner teachers, so you're probably doing these things with your kids. But we might use colored pencils, and the kids can color with the colored pencils. You can see, sorry.
Yep, sorry.
You can see with the colored pencils how you can mix the colors together. I also have these fabulous little chips, and I got these from Amazon. So you can take the 2 colors together and they can mix them. Can you see them here? Sorry, can you see them? So they can say yellow and blue make green. And if you have it with a class, kids can even do it together. Right now with COVID, this is hard because you're too close together.
Exactly.
But it's really fun. And these chips are great. They can see the color through them. So that's a really fun activity for the kids to do. So when I ask my kids to do things, and even my 2-year-olds have got this, I like to give the kids choices. So we listen to their ideas, and then we model what we might want them to do. So to build their confidence, we need to first show them what to do. And then we can give them their choices to build creativity, to give them agency. So I would do something like this. Think, 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 think. What should we do? Can you do it with me? Think, 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 think. What should we do? So for example, if we're talking about things we might do on the playground, should we ride a bike or should we jump rope? We can give them the 2 choices to start. Later, we can ask them for more choices, but my kids love this so much. And so please remember that, think, 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 and we'll come back to that some more. My little ones were also learning about animals. And so we talked about, so which animal should we be first? So think, 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 what should we do? And they might say, let's fly like a bird. And then I would make up a little song like, fly like a bird, oh, fly like a bird, fly, 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 fly like a bird. And we would do all these animals. And then I said, pick your 3 favorite animals. And then we'd play some lively music and they would move around the classroom. So that was one way where they would use language, but we would also have some student choice. My kindergartners were doing a unit on healthy choices. And so of course, maybe you've read this book about the very hungry caterpillar. And so they've talked about the different foods that the caterpillar would eat through in the book. So I asked the kids, well, what do you think we would like to eat? So we did think, 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 what should we eat? And then we added that to the song, I like to eat apples and bananas. Maybe you know that song, I like to eat apples and bananas. So each class made a poster. Our classes in the kindergarten are named after flowers. So the snowdrop said they should have rice and meat. They would go together. I like to eat rice and meat. Every class made their own poster about things that they wanted to eat. And so we hung them up in the room and everyone had a chance to see it. There was this class, Snowdrop said they wanted to eat pizza and ice cream because they said, sometimes you just have to have a celebration.
At the beginning of every unit of Oxford Discover, we introduce vocabulary. So you can see there's a vocabulary set here. And the focus of this is food, as you can see. So there are many different kinds of food. We also have a pot, we have a stone. These are all going to be used in the story that follows. But what we want to do is to invite students to think critically about the vocabulary. And so if you see in activity B, we invite them to categorize the words into things they can eat and things they can't eat. So they take it from the vocabulary list. However, we invite students to think of other things from their own experience that they can eat and things that they cannot eat. So this gives them a chance to think critically, gives them choices as well as a voice.
I know you're smiling at me.
I am smiling at you, yes, because you're suddenly transformed here. As you can see, the story that follows is called Stone Soup. And in this particular story, a family comes into a village and the family is hungry. They have a big pot with them, but they don't have any food. However, the villagers cannot help them. In fact, everyone in the village is hungry. So what they decide to do is to put the pot, fill it with water, and put some stones in it. And slowly the villagers come out and say, what are you making? And they say, we're making stone soup. Well, I've got some potatoes. And so one villager adds potatoes, another villager adds carrots, another villager adds onions. Pretty soon the whole village has a wonderful pot of soup. So this is about collaboration, about cooperation, and it gives students an opportunity to think about some of the things they would like to contribute to the stone soup. Now, as you can see, we also have a play script for this. So at the end of the book, you can turn it into a production where kids actually act out the parts. And again, there are many opportunities for choice here.
So for example, your students might say, let's add something else to the soup. Or they might say, I have a pot. Or like in our kindergarten, we do have some toys that they can play with. So they might have the pot. They might want to have some costumes like the chef's hat and the apron, and then they could pretend to do this. My kindergarten children recently made a little ice cream shop. They had the Christmas store where the elves were serving things. So it's really fun when the kids can actually take on things like costumes and add their own ideas to it. They might even write their own recipe for the stone soup.
And that's definitely an example of student ownership as well. So
yeah, so I don't know if we can, well, I think it's difficult to write in the chat right now about that, but you might think about what you could add if you were doing this story.
Very good. Okay, student voice is next. Now, please remember that many of the things that we're talking about combine choice, voice, and ownership. But when we look at student voice, what we're talking about is giving an opportunity for children to wonder and inquire, to be participating in the learning experience so that they can be curious out loud and ask the teacher questions, ask each other questions. We also want them to have a voice in how they learn. How should we think about approaching this subject? What would you like to find out and how should we do it? And also assessment is very important. We're going to talk about this toward the end, how we want children to have an opportunity to self-assess, to think about where they are, what they've learned in any particular lesson, and as we're moving through the units. Okay. Now, this is from Oxford Discover. As you can see, again, it's a vocabulary set. We want to mention that in Oxford Discover, we really want to promote higher order thinking skills. We often refer to these as HOTS. Let's look a little more closely at what we mean. This is Bloom's revised taxonomy, and you can see it's a grid going from lower order thinking skills up to the higher order thinking skills. So as you can see, we have remembering and understanding toward the bottom. That doesn't mean they aren't important. It just means that they come first. And then as students understand and comprehend information, we want to do more with it. We want them to be able to analyze, evaluate, and even create with it. So this is what we're attempting, what we want to do through every lesson, move students up. And the wonderful thing about higher order thinking skills is it's motivating for children. Here's an example. This is a vocabulary set talking about forms of transportation. We have subway, fire engine, ambulance, train, taxi, and so forth. So the low order thinking skill would make sure that students understand the language we're teaching, that they understand basically the concept of a subway and train and so forth. But then we want them to think critically. So in activity B, we invite students to look at these items and choose 2 of the best answers. So for example, number 1 says, it uses flashing lights when it drives on busy streets. We have taxi, fire engine, and ambulance. So looking at what students have just learned and from their prior experience, they're probably going to choose fire engine and ambulance. But we want to talk more about that. We'd like to say, well, let's think about flashing lights. How do people react when they see flashing lights behind them? And then from their own experience, they might say, well, my mother or father would pull over and let the vehicle go through. So why do we do that? What constitutes an emergency? So we can get much deeper into the learning. And again, we're inviting students to draw from their own experience. So this is just one simple example of how we can add student voice to critical thinking skills.
Okay. I love this unit. This is a unit about moving to a new place. Mm-hmm. And so when we move to a new place, there are things that we do. We're packing, we're moving, we're meeting neighbors, shopping. And where we come from, we're ice skating and fishing and raking leaves. So we put all these things together into this unit. The story is actually about a family that moves to Minnesota, where mm-hmm. we're from.
Exactly.
And so we want you to think right now, maybe we can do this in the chat box. When students first learn the vocabulary, it's just remembering and understanding. But now we want to do something more with it. So we asked them to think about, can we do this activity indoors? Can we do this activity outdoors? Or can we do it both indoors or outdoors? So can you think of an activity either in the 10 listed here or something you know that you can do both indoors and outdoors? Can we write that in the chat box and we see what people come up with? What can you do both indoors and outdoors?
We can't see the chat box, so we're just assuming that you've got some great answers. Okay.
It's really interesting where we come from in Minnesota. Many people go fishing indoors in the wintertime. There are little fishing houses out on the lake, very fancy and nice and warm. So that's kind of fun.
They literally are fishing indoors, but they're on the lakes. Exactly.
Yes. But this is a great way for students to think about the 2 sets of the vocabulary in a different way.
If you can't see the answers, I can read it, by the way.
Oh, that's great. Sure. Thank you.
Okay. They say dancing, meeting neighbors, sleep. One audience.
Oh, that's a good one.
True.
And that's it, I guess. We got 3 answers.
Okay, well, great.
Thank
you. Thank you. Okay. This particular unit is about poetry, and we introduce a poem that has a lot of insects in it. And so we use that as a vocabulary set: ladybug, cricket, grasshopper. Now that's a lot of insects. And on the face of it, just learning the insect names isn't that exciting. But if we go to the higher order thinking skills, we can invite students to discuss which of these insects do you think are the most colorful, the most beautiful, the quickest, the noisiest, or the ugliest. And they can do these in pairs. They can discuss it together. And so they can, again, bring in their own experience. The quickest insect, what would the quickest insect be? That takes a little bit of thinking. So that's the way we can get students to work together and to either make choices as well as to have a voice.
They could even have a little like fashion show, like our ladybug is the most colorful or the most beautiful. And that would be a fun way for them to talk about each of their special animals or insects that they were talking about.
They can even make a line of from the most to the least colorful, most to the least beautiful, and so forth. Exactly. There's so many things that we can do this with higher order thinking skills. Okay, we also support student voice in Oxford Discover readings. Now we talk about, reading as an essential skill for our children. And in Oxford Discover, we build all of these reading skills as we move up through the levels. But student voice is very important. Now, as you know, we begin every unit with a vocabulary set. This particular unit is about plants. And so we look at some of the different parts of the plants that we introduced that in the beginning. We also have what is called a reading strategy on the right-hand side of the page, where we help students to become stronger readers and looking out for things for this example, cause and effect. We move to the reading then. And again, readings are very important. They can be in a variety of genres. We have fictional and non-fictional readings. And when you read with your students, there are a variety of options. You can read together. You can take turns reading. Many of you might even have tape scripts or CDs where you can actually hear the narrator read for them. But as they are reading and comprehending, we are also tapping into the reading strategy, which is cause and effect. And then we move through the reading. And finally, to add student voice and choice, we invite students to ask each other comprehension questions about the reading. This is really effective. And we start out normally, this is a process, so we invite students to start out with true or false statements or yes or no questions. For example, a sunflower is a plant, true or false? Or is a sunflower a plant, yes or no? And then we can move up into information questions, who, what, when, where, why, and so forth. And finally, students can be invited to ask wondering questions, bigger questions about the topic that might need some research, but things that they really want to know about. In Oxford Discover, when we introduce a topic, we always introduce it or talk about it through a non-fictional and a fictional reading. This is the fictional reading about plants, and it's a story about a little girl named Marisol. And Marisol plants a sunflower in the early summer, and it grows up to this beautiful flower, and everyone in the neighborhood is marveling at it, and she's so proud. But suddenly toward the end of the summer, it starts drying up and it starts to die. And so Marisol experiences this circle of life and her reactions to it. She's very sad at first, but she tries to understand what's happening. So when students ask questions to each other in this type of reading, they're talking about characters and feelings and motivations. And even we're talking about wondering what Marisol might do next summer. So they can talk about these types of things and ask each other questions. Now, as teachers, our job is to walk around as students are discussing these questions and assessing our students' deeper understanding of these readings. Okay, but it is really a student-led activity.
This is such a beautiful story too. So beautiful.
Exactly. Projecting is the word I wanted to know. They
Yeah.
can project and see what what she might do next year. Okay, writing projects, students need to learn how to write, and it's a wonderful opportunity to add student voice to your lessons.
So I don't know if you teach poetry, but I love this unit on poetry. And one thing that I think is really great is for students to think that they really can be a poet. So there are 3 points at this top corner about how students can be a good poet. One is that a good poet observes things carefully. Like when Susan was talking about looking outside the window and you go, oh yeah, that's what a good poet does too. A good poet has imagination. They're wondering about things and coming up with crazy ideas. And a good poet knows how to describe things. And that's what we talked about with the insects and describing them with the adjectives. So here you can see there are 3 different kinds of poetry that students can do, and they can come up with all kinds of ideas. Some students may want to do the acrostic, the sinkan, or the haiku. It's up to them to choose and to write on their own topic. A lot of my kids like to draw pictures with it as well.
There are a variety of writing projects that we have in Oxford Discover, but you can use them in any curriculum. Opinion essay. So when our students are invited to write, we give them all of the framework for it to show them exactly how it's done. But then at the end, they can choose the topic that they wish to talk about. What is their opinion about whatever? Steps in a process. Again, we were using this, how to grow spinach. What are the various steps? We show students exactly how to write this, in every, and you can see in the Learn box, there's all the details that we can use to assess how well they're doing. But in the end, the students can choose what they want to write about. A fictional interview with an explorer. Also wonderful ways for students to choose their own explorer, to choose the questions they ask the explorer, and then to get the information they need.
And I have to tell you, my students at school, they weren't explorers, but they dressed up as inventors. And so they wrote a little poster about the inventor that they were learning about, and they dressed up in costumes. And so it was a great way for them to express those ideas. So that was our 4th graders that did that.
Finally, we look at ownership, and students gain ownership of their learning by working together, by working independently, small groups, by discussing what they have learned. So they talk about, what have we learned today as students in pairs, small groups, and eventually as a whole class activity. And then also by demonstrating what they've learned through projects. So let's look at a couple examples here.
So are you familiar with what a time capsule is? So in a time capsule, the students are choosing some important things. So what I love about these projects in Oxford Discover is that it's very clearly laid out for the students. This is what you need to do. In your group, you think of things that are important to you today. Choose the container you're going to put them in. Put the real objects, photos or drawings. You hope that it wasn't their dad's phone or something. And then write a statement about it. And then the students present it. And the great thing, I don't know if you're using iPads or Chromebooks at your school, but my students are always using things like iPads and Chromebooks. They can practice with that iPad or Chromebook to see how fluent they are in their presentation, or they can give each other peer feedback. So a lot of times one group is working with another group. Mm-hmm. We use a platform called Seesaw also, where they can show their work and the process of their work. Other things like creating a school news program, like I said, everything is very, very clearly laid out. Each person has a role, but they can work together. And a panel discussion, this is great. We're taking on some of the sustainable development goals at our school. And so in this activity, how can we save energy at our school? Or how can we make our school a more efficient place? So at our school, we actually put in some water containers. So students are refilling their water bottles with things like this, rather than bringing PET bottles to school or buying PET bottles. So this is one way that they can talk about saving energy.
A great way to tap into this. Sorry,
the ownership.
Ownership, thank you. Is student assessment. Exit tickets. Exit tickets are a very big thing right now. And basically what this means is at the end of every lesson, we invite students to talk about what they've learned in that lesson. And there's a variety of ways to do it. There are so many examples of exit tickets. If you go online and you Google exit tickets, there are some amazing, really fun and creative ways to do this. We're just going to give you a couple examples. Now, as you remember, Kathy told us about colors and mixing primary colors to get secondary colors and so forth. So an exit ticket for that might be students give their name and the date, of course. And then one thing I learned about mixing colors today. So the student can write down what they've learned, one point they've learned. And maybe there's something that student is still wondering about. There's an opportunity to write that in the exit ticket too. So this is a great chance for students to be self-assessing. What did I learn today? And that's really powerful when a student has a chance to really reflect on what he or she has been learning. And then as teachers, it's a great opportunity for us to see how students have responded to the lesson and if there's things that we need to come back to. Stone soup. We talked about this wonderful little activity that can be also put into a production. So let's say that the students did have this play production. We would have, for example, an exit ticket that would say, this story taught me what? What was the value they took out of the story? And one thing I did well in the play, or one thing I need to practice, they could look and assess their own performance skills. So you can decide what skills or what knowledge you want to focus on in the exit ticket. When we talked about Marisol in the Garden of Happiness, what would be a good exit ticket for that type of lesson? Well, we can invite students to tell us how the story made them feel and why it made them feel that way. Which part of the story they like best. Now, these are just some very simple assessments, but you could make it as interesting or creative as what you want. And also projecting, I think Marisol will or won't plant a sunflower next summer, and the students' reasons why. So this really gets into finding out just how deeply our students understand this topic.
And using it in the last few minutes of class. It's a great way for students to like pull their knowledge together.
Exactly. So please check this out too. I mean, there's so many great sites about this. So we really love this.
So I wanted to show you too, my kindergarten children, this is one of the puppets I have in my classroom. And they said, Miss Kampa, this puppet is not wearing a mask. So I was in charge of bus duty one day, and one of these elementary students, her name is Cheyun, she said, I told them about the puppet, and she said, don't worry, Miss Kampa, I can help you by making a mask. And so she took her old uniform that she had outgrown, she recycled it and made this mask. And now the kids in kindergarten are very happy about this.
Okay, so how will you support learner agency? This is something to think about. We've used examples from Oxford Discover, but any curriculum you use, there are many opportunities for students to have choices, creating, be able to choose, having a voice, and most importantly, really owning the lesson, feeling that they are really part of the learning experience and they're contributing to it as much as the teacher is. Anything else to add?
I think the challenge is little by little, we're used to being the sage on the stage, and giving our students that chance to have more input into the lesson is the real challenge. And so I think that's the hard thing for teachers is, where can I do that in my lesson? Where can I give my students more choices, more voice, more ownership?
And it is a process. So as you can see, as you start moving in this direction, students get very good at offering choices, at asking questions, at making suggestions. And so it really builds these skills in very important ways.
And in doing so, it builds their confidence, and it builds a lot more speaking skills. So we want to thank you. Thank you to Aisha for being our
moderator.
Thank you, moderator today.
Now, how do we say thank you in Turkish? We have it here.
Teşekkür ederim.
Can you say it? Can someone help us?
Teşekkür ederim.
Okay. That was beautiful.
Yes, much better. I pulled that right off the internet. We just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to ITK for inviting us again this year. And a special thanks again to Oxford University Press for helping us be part of this conference, to Harun and Nick for inviting us to come. It was just a pleasure for all of us, for both of us, to be here with all of you today. And
are there any questions, Aisha, that anyone had asked? Or
when I checked the chat box, I haven't seen any question, but right now I cannot see the chat box. If there is any, Mr. David, can you check the chat box just one more time, please?
Of course. I think Luis has a question.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Luis. Oh, okay.
Yeah, my question is, how can we encourage students that are shy to participate? How can we give the shyer students a voice?
It's a very good question.
That is really hard, because I know a lot of times they do not want to speak. And I have those students too. And so a lot of times it's you spending time one-on-one with those students. There's, I think it's called the 10x2 strategy, where you spend regular time with that student, really focusing on that student. Spending time asking them questions and really building a relationship, a stronger relationship. And in that way, then they feel that they're more confident.
There's one more.
There's a process, how students work together in teams. As we all know, there are very different dynamics taking place. There can be very strong personalities in a group that can dominate. There are others who be very quiet. So it isn't always a perfect process, but it is something that I think over time can really develop those good social skills as you said, as Kathy said, the support that you as a teacher can provide coming in and
but sometimes it does take like that extra focus. And like for me, I'm a specialist teacher. And so I look at, okay, this week, I really want to focus on like these 4 students. I want to make sure that I'm really asking them more questions. And the next week I might spend time with more. And then in between time, I'm going to try and seek those kids out in their classrooms. So, oh, what are you doing right now? And in their homeroom classrooms, what are you doing right now? What are the things are you interested in? So sometimes it's finding that interest that the kids have that sometimes opens the floodgates. And like we have the boy who loves dinosaurs, and there are kids who just have special loves. And when you can find that really, you develop a special relationship.
There's another question.
Success can just be a very small baby step forward. Like I'm thinking one of the students in your class who was here, who was very shy, and then just took a small step forward in contributing to the class discussion. It was like, that's a success, right? And it's just a small one, but that's how you start to create those, more opportunities for success.
And sometimes like I use a lot of Post-it notes in my class when I ask like for either these exit tickets or just a simple Post-it note, and they can write on the Post-it note something that they're thinking about. And then it's easy to bring up those questions.
Right.
Aisha, we had a final slide that has the QR code on it that I think is important for us to share.
Of course.
And
there you
also,
go, you can share.
Let me change to that.
Last one. There it is. And
so there's
two
a
things,
there's a QR code, and then there's the badge, and then we have all of our social media sites. So if you're interested in seeing, like you mentioned, like some of the songs and things, there's a YouTube page. I have a blog that I write at magictimekids.com. So I've just recently published a blog about the new year and about Valentine's Day. So if you're interested in any of those things, that's right there.
And our email address, magictimekids, is we're accessible to both of us. And so you feel free to email us anytime, and we can get you to the right resources or try to answer your questions. The Supporting Learning Agency badge, we were told you can receive that badge if you
I think when you
fill out a form, I think.
when you do this QR code, then you get it in a
I guess
we cannot
see the screen right now.
Oh,
Sorry.
you can't see the screen right now.
Shoot.
So
You
we didn't see the QR code. By the way, I think you were really amazing guides for the teachers. So can I call you Kampa and Kampa? You know, like
Kampa and Vilina. I'm just thinking of how we need to do this here. So
have we lost you, or I mean, we don't? Oh, there
no,
we
I
are.
see you there. Let me do share screen again. I think that was the problem. Here we go.
Yes, now we can see.
Our last names are different. My last name is Vilina.
I see. So Kampa and Vilina.
We are married, but Kathy kept her.
But Kampa and Kampa sounds good.
There
you know,
you
like
go.
the old movies.
Pardon me?
Kampa and Kampa just sounded too good, like the old times, heart and heart.
Kampa and Kampa. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, mine is. Yeah.
Well, we have a lot of resources for teachers, and so if you you know, when we're on Facebook, we're often sharing posts that are really important to teachers, or on LinkedIn. We have the YouTube page where there are the videos that I make, sometimes making videos just for my kids, and I'm sharing them there on that
Again,
page.
it's under Kathy Kampa.
Yeah,
right?
and then Magic Time Kids is our blog. If you want to read research, academia.edu. I'm not as active on Instagram or Twitter. I have a Pinterest page that has quite a few interesting things for teachers. So I know if you're a young learner teacher, especially, you're always like, need more resources, we need more ideas, because we're always thinking about new things for our kids.
Exactly.
So please feel free to check that out. And like I said, again, if you ever want to do more things with like music and movement for young learners, like tomorrow I have another workship that I'm doing with all kinds of songs. Oh, we should have done that. We did it. We did it. We did it today. We did it. We did it. Hip, hip, hooray.
All right. That's
Thank you so much.
All right.
All right. I said you want to round up?
Okay.